An infant dies after a medical equipment blunder at the Prince of Wales Hospital. Police arrest 19 people in a crackdown on a money laundering syndicate. And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit China on June 18th and 19th. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. An infant died after a medical equipment blunder at the Prince of Wales Hospital yesterday. An infusion tube meant to provide the child with medicine was found unopened for some 50 minutes. Patients' rights groups have criticized the hospital and called the incident a case of negligence. Timothy Lee tells us more.
The infant involved in the incident was born this Monday at the Prince of Wales Hospital after less than 28 weeks of gestation. The child, suffering from a congenital heart condition, was monitored by hospital personnel and underwent treatment in the intensive care unit. The infant required the use of a ventilator and drug infusion. Because of the premature baby's low blood pressure, hospital staff gradually increased the drug infusion rate at around 3 in the morning on Tuesday, from an average of 0.3 milliliters to 0.7 milliliters per hour. 50 minutes later, the drug infusion machine sounded an alarm and attracted the attention of the medical staff. They then found the infusion tube's valve closed, which meant the infant had not received the medication. Although the hospital staff attempted to adjust the infusion device again, the infant's health situation deteriorated rapidly and died at around 4 p.m. on Tuesday. The hospital authority reported the infant's death 1 day later. Meanwhile, Secretary for Health Lo Sheng-mao said he will address the incident publicly. The Prince of Wales Hospital has issued an apology to the infant's family and said it will do its utmost to offer assistance. But Lam Chi-yao, who leads a local patients' rights group, emphasized the infusion process is a common medical procedure. The group believes it's likely that human error was involved, and that it is unacceptable for hospital staff to discover the error almost an hour late. The Prince of Wales Hospital staff said it has taken immediate action upon preliminary investigation of the equipment error. This, as the distributor of the hospital's medical equipment stressed that it will update the safety measures of its machines. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Police have arrested 19 people in crackdown on a money laundering syndicate. The suspects allegedly allowed their bank accounts to be used for moving dirty money.
Officers say 5 of the people arrested opened accounts at a virtual bank between September last year and March this year. Together, they loaned a total of $3.1 million. Over the last couple of months, they are said to have lied to the police, saying they did not open accounts, so they didn't have to repay the loans. Investigations show their accounts were controlled by people with triad backgrounds. The loans that they received were deposited into multiple stooge accounts. Officers believe that's to perform unlawful transactions totaling some $100 million. Ngai Chun Kit, a senior inspector of the fraud squad, said although the personal details that the 5 core members provided to the banks were fake, the pictures they uploaded were real. That's why officers believe these 5 core members knew about opening the accounts. Also, the mastermind is believed to be a 30-year-old person who claimed to be a hawker. Officers also believe the 5 core members knew him in person, and a probe is underway as to how members were recruited and how they distributed their gains. Police also warned that anyone who lent personal information for unlawful purposes will face consequences.
The Education Bureau revised the procurement guidelines for aided schools with newly added national security elements. Under it, schools could disqualify suppliers or terminate contracts citing national security risks. Jackie Lin reports.
Under the Education Bureau's updated procurement guidelines, this is the newly added section titled Safeguarding National Security. It underscores that school staff of all levels must effectively prevent and suppress any act or activity endangering national security. It states that schools should exercise their professional judgment, maintain a high degree of sensitivity, and prudently assess any political security risks that may be involved in every stage of the procurement. Relevant clauses should be included in the quotation or tender documents to allow schools to could disqualify a supplier or terminate a contract in the interest of national security. Some school principals said tendering procedures have been regular practices for procurement of services or facilities with a value at $50,000 or above. They include catering services, maintenance for elevators, and purchases of furniture.
令人懷疑嘅實際嘅證據呢，
Principal Li Yiying, chairperson of the Hong Kong Subsidized Secondary Schools Council, said the government has provided samples on how to incorporate the new clauses into quotation documents, and she believes it won't be too hard to execute the new clauses. But she said it might be harder for schools to judge when they should terminate the contract with suppliers allegedly with national security concerns. This as schools might not be able to comprehensively grasp the political backgrounds of each company. The council hopes the Education Bureau will deliberate alongside aided schools on any such cases before a decision is made on what action should be taken against the contractors in question. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has kept its key interest rate unchanged after having raised it 10 straight times to combat high inflation. But the U.S. Central Bank signaled it may raise rates twice more this year, beginning as soon as next month. The Fed has raised its benchmark rate by 5 percentage points since March last year, the fastest pace of increases in 40 years. The latest move to leave its rate unchanged suggests it believes the much higher borrowing rates have made some progress in taming inflation. But top Fed officials want to take time to more fully assess how their rate hikes have affected inflation and the economy.
Although growth in consumer spending has picked up this year, activity in the housing sector remains weak, largely reflecting higher mortgage rates. Higher interest rates and slower output growth also appear to be weighing on business fixed investment. Committee participants generally expect subdued growth to continue. In our summary of economic projections, the median projection has real GDP growth at 1.0% this year and 1.1% next year, well below the median estimate of the longer-run normal growth rate.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry and U.S. State Department have confirmed that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit China later this week. Chinese state media said Blinken's trip will take place between the 18th and 19th of June. The two sides did not say which Chinese officials Blinken would meet. Dan Orell tells us more.
Wednesday's announcement followed a tense phone call between Foreign Minister Qin Gang and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. During the discussion, Qin urged the United States to stop meddling in China's internal affairs and harming its security. Blinken will be the most senior U.S. official to visit China since President Joe Biden took office in January 2021. His trip was initially planned for earlier this year. However, it was postponed after the shoot-down of what Washington said was a Chinese spy balloon that had crossed from Alaska to South Carolina. The U.S. State Department said the aim of Blinken's visit is to restore a sense of calm and normality to high-level contact between the two superpowers.
We have three objectives for the visit. First, the Secretary wants to establish communication channels that are open and empowered to discuss important challenges, address misperceptions, and prevent miscalculation, to manage competition between our two countries. Second, as he always does, he will stand up and speak out for our values and our interests. He will raise clearly and candidly our concerns on a range of issues, and he will also discuss a host of regional and global matters. Third, he is committed to exploring potential cooperation on transnational challenges when it is in our interest, in areas such as climate and global macroeconomic stability.
Ahead of the visit, a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said the United States should work with China to manage differences and bring their bilateral relationship back on track. Wang Wenbin re-emphasized the points made by Foreign Minister Qin Gang in his phone call with Blinken earlier this week. Wang said Qin stated China always views and handles China-US relations based on the principles of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence and cooperation proposed by President Xi Jinping. Dan Orell, TVB News.
Germany announced its first national security strategy on Wednesday. The document called Russia the biggest threat to Europe and warned about being too reliant on China and other countries for critical minerals. It also highlighted the growing rivalry with China as Beijing tries to use its economic might to achieve political goals. Tracy Furness reports.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, Defence Minister Boris Pistorius and Finance Minister Christian Lindner presented their government's first national security strategy on Wednesday. The document provides an overview of Berlin's foreign policy, which has shifted towards prioritising security over economic interests.
Die nationale Sicherheitsstrategie ist, das vielleicht auch deutlich zu sagen, nicht.
Chancellor Scholz said, "I want to make it clear that the national security strategy is not the end point, but the starting point from which we will organise a continuous process of cooperation between all levels of government, the economy and society in order to strengthen our security in the long term." The 76-page document highlights the main threats Germany perceives it faces, from supply chain disruption to climate change. The war in Ukraine has heightened anxiety about how prepared Germany's own armed forces are, prompting Scholz to announce a turning point on military spending. Germany aims to meet NATO's 2% of GDP military spending target from next year. The document also raised the question about the country's response to threats of disinformation, cyber attacks, and economic pressure from major powers such as China.
Sicherheit im 21. Jahrhundert ist mehr.
The foreign minister said security in the 21st century is more than military and diplomacy. It means reliability, getting essential medicines at the pharmacy. Security means not being spied on by China when meeting friends, or not being manipulated by Russian bots when scrolling through social media networks. Using blunt language about China, its top trading partner, the strategy document describes Beijing as aggressively claiming supremacy in Asia and seeking to use its economic might to achieve political goals.
中国始终是世界和平的建设者。
Wang Wenbin, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson, said Thursday that Germany's national security strategy is a move to politicize normal collaborations. The document could divide and fragment the world. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Still ahead on tonight's news, EU lawmakers passed the world's first set of comprehensive rules for AI. And most air circulator fans fail safety tests conducted by the Consumer Council. European Union lawmakers signed off on Wednesday on the world's first set of comprehensive rules for artificial intelligence, clearing a key hurdle as authorities around the globe race to rein in AI. The European Parliament vote is one of the last steps before the rules become law, which could act as a model for other places working on similar regulations. The guardrails for AI has taken on more urgency as rapid advances in chatbots like ChatGPT show the benefits the emerging technology can bring and the new perils it poses. A representative of the Computer and Communications Industry Association, a lobbying group for tech companies, said Europe's new AI rules need to effectively address risks while leaving enough flexibility for developers to deliver useful AI applications. Back locally, the Consumer Council found that most air circulator fans have failed safety tests. The watchdog also found that most latex balloons contain possible carcinogens. Veronica Lin tells us more.
Hong Kong summers are hot and humid, and as such, air conditioning and fans are essential. The Consumer Council tested the safety and performance of 12 air circulation fan models, among which 8 models failed some of the safety tests. 4 of them were found to have an increased risk of electric shock due to insufficient insulation distance.
For the consumer, actually, if for the insulation distance, basically, if a normal use, basically the risk may not be so big. But if you want to remove the fan guard or fan blades, then we will recommend that before you're doing so, you should unplug the fans to minimize the risk of because the electric shock.
Louis added that parents also need to be aware of their children sticking their fingers in the fan or playing with it. These models of air circulator fans are particularly dangerous as they have auto-oscillation functions, he said. Meanwhile, the watchdog also tested a total of 35 samples of 19 latex balloon models. They found that all samples released various types of nitrosamines and/or nitrosatable substances, some of which were suspected carcinogens. Moreover, nearly 70% of samples exceeded relevant EU toy safety requirements. Balloons are among the most popular toys for children. However, some still inflate them by mouth. The Council recommends users to use a balloon pump and wash hands after touching latex balloons. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
The Consumer Council found that despite the fact that elderly people pay the same premium for travel insurance as younger adults, nearly 70% of the plans have lowered maximum benefits. In a survey on travel insurance for the elderly conducted by the Council in 2016, it found that the situation of reduced travel coverage for the elderly has yet to be improved. 8 plans were found to have lowered the maximum benefit limit on personal accidents for the insured elderly aged over 65 to only 50% of the original benefits. The Council reminds consumers to extensively compare and carefully review all plans, particularly the scope of coverage, before selecting a plan. And that's the news. Thanks for watching.